Hello, my name is Dr. Crystal Trivett, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Fred Lipscomb. Today is February 23rd, 2022. Hi, Fred, how are you? It's so good to be able to talk with you today.
Thank you, Crystal. I'm doing fine. Thank you.
I'm going to kind of dive right in and ask just a little bit about your backgrounds, like where did you grow up, and how you got into the field of education.
Great. Um, I'm originally from Yonkers, New York. I was born and raised in Yonkers, New York, attended Yonkers High School, and I went to the State University of New York College of Cortland, where I received my undergraduate degree in education. It was there that I became an RA, which really exposed me to higher education. For 3 years as a student, an underrepresented student at a predominantly Caucasian institution, we had less than 1% African Americans at my institution. I decided to get involved and I became an RA, which meant that I was a resident assistant, which meant that I was responsible for the students living on a particular floor. That was my way of financing myself through college. Prior to that, I had no idea what an RA was or what an RA did. So I got exposed to this field as a freshman. I did that for 3 years, graduated with my degree, and then I taught for a few years, but I really missed working at the university level. With my background as an RA, I was able to get a job at UC Santa Barbara as a hall director. And so that was my big move from the East Coast to the West Coast. And it was a major, major, major move. But it was a great move. I got away from the cold weather to sunny Central California. And so at Santa Barbara, I worked there for 2 years as a hall director, responsible for students in the residence halls, about 400 students. And then all of a sudden, an opportunity came at this place called UC Irvine. I had never heard of Irvine. I had never visited Irvine, but I was intrigued. So I came down and I interviewed, and I was selected to be a residence life coordinator responsible for 7 residence halls, and we were expanding to 13 more residence halls, totaling 20 at Middle Earth Housing. And that's where my career at UCI began. I was a residence life coordinator for 3 years in Middle Earth as we grew from a small community of 350 students to 1,130 students. And then from there, I became the associate director of facilities. And ultimately, I then moved on to become the director of campus village housing, which was just an apartment community of 800 students and a full staff that I was fully responsible for. I did that for about 12 years. And ultimately, I became the executive director of undergraduate housing, which meant that I was responsible for the undergraduate housing at UCI, Middle Earth, Mesa Court, Campus Village, and Arroyo Vista. So I did that for several years, ultimately. Then I went to Cal State Fullerton, was the director of housing at Cal State Fullerton, and then came back to UCI as the special assistant to the vice chancellor for student affairs, working on projects such as new narratives, conversations about race, culture, and dialogue. And then ultimately, I became the director of undergraduate and graduate housing at UCI. So a long path to get to the my final destination before I retired 5 years ago.
Wow. Okay, that was a lot, and I gotta need to go back a little bit to the beginning. And you mentioned that you were at Cal State Fullerton, and then you came to UCI. And what year was that?
I left UCI in 2010, went to Cal State Fullerton and helped them open up their brand new residence halls for
Oh,
3 years. And then I came back in 2014 back to UCI as a special assistant to the vice chancellor.
okay. So now I see. When did you first come to UCI? What year did you first come to
So I
UCI?
first came after I went to UC Santa Barbara. I was at Santa Barbara 87, 89, and I came to UCI in 89.
Okay, 1989.
Yes.
And wow, that's just the tail end of the 80s coming up to the 90s. What was the campus like at that time?
Mhm. At that time, we were still a relatively small campus. We were still trying to identify ourselves, not only within the UC system, but within the collegiate system. We were about 13,000 students at the time. So again, a medium-sized, institution. And again, I was particularly focused in Middle Earth, where again, we were 350 students when I started, and within the first year, we grew to 1,130 students. So really the population grew drastically. The demographics of the campus at that time were probably about 55% Asian American, um, approximately 9% Chicano Latino, 2% African American, and then the rest Caucasian. So again, a very small African American representation on the campus. And as we saw over time, the percentage has changed, but the numbers have grown.
Hmm. So when you began in when you first came to UCI, right? What was the state of your department at that time? What was the campus or housing looking to do as it grew?
Mhm. Um, our primary goal was to be able to accommodate the growth of the campus in general. And that's the reason that we grew from 350 students to 1,130 students, because there were more and more students that the university was admitting, and we needed to be able to provide housing for those students. As that first year transition from high school to the collegiate environment. So our focus was, how could we meet the demand of enrollment at UCI? And as a department, what we could do to make sure that we could balance that demand and still give students a quality education and a quality living learning experience.
And what was your approach? What was your vision?
Um, at that point, I was on the lower rung of the of the ladder, so I wasn't very much in the decision making process. More in after decisions were made, what we could do to make sure that students were comfortable. And as such, we designed several programs on the campus. Our residence halls became very theme oriented. We had a health and fitness, residence hall. We had a diversity residence hall. We had civic engagement residence hall. So we tried to design living spaces where students had a particular focus and interest, and that we could support that interest and focus. Misty Mountain was the multicultural hall in Middle Earth. And as students signed up for that particular hall, it was a diverse group of students to learn about race and culture and how communities interact with one another. That we had academic sponsorship, so we had faculty members participating to lecture students and to engage in social interactive opportunities.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that? How did individuals interact with the students? How did they facilitate
Yes.
conversations? What
Mhm.
kind of program was there?
Yes. So students first had to apply to be in that particular hall. So it was a selection process. And again, we were looking for student leaders who wanted to make an impact and a change, not just on UCI, but after they left UCI, on the greater community at large. Through dialogue with the academic side of the house, professors, and our live-on staff, we developed a curriculum where students got to engage in conversations about race, culture, and identity. And I remember in particular, a student had never actually experienced working with an African American, and they had to write journals. And I was amazed as I was reading the journals in terms of the lack of exposure of many of our students coming to UCI of African Americans. At that point, the demographics of UCI were these are the top 12% high school students, and coming from a very homogeneous environment. So in many cases, their exposure to African Americans was limited. And the perceptions that I read in journals was just amazing in terms of how non-African Americans were influenced by social media, TV in particular, in the 80s and 90s. That was actually a big shock. So I think the classes provided an opportunity for education and understanding. not just for African Americans, but Chicano Latinos, and also for Asian Americans as well, as that was a new exposure for many of our other students as well.
Did you engage in those conversations directly? Did you help facilitate them?
Yes, not only was I responsible for the class, but as I said, I was reading the journals, and so I was meeting with students and actually being a part of the dialogue. And I think as students got to see um, staff, educators, of different, races and ethnicities, that provided them some insight to not everything what they see on TV represents a whole entire population. And so they felt very comfortable engaging in those conversations. Still very sensitive, but still very comfortable.
What were some of the challenges, as you just indicated, could be
Yeah,
very sensitive to
yeah.
engage in
Um,
conversations like these?
I think, when you get a group of individuals in an environment that don't know one another and you talk about race, culture, and identity, you really need to create an environment that's safe and comfortable. And that, takes time. That takes experiences, that takes opportunities, that takes, social gatherings to kind of break down those barriers or those walls where students can now feel okay with having discussions, and not feel like they're going to offend anyone. And that, people that are being discussed are realizing that this is an educational opportunity for everyone to learn. So I think that was definitely one of the biggest challenges, was to try to get students to open up, especially with a large Asian population where direct confrontation was not necessarily something that many of them were comfortable with. So again, getting over that this is a learning opportunity for everyone, and we can all learn from one another. So I think at the end, I think students really benefited from that. You could see the joy and the laughter and the relationships that they established that may not have been established, and barriers may have remained had we not had those dialogues.
So how long was this uh, program? It was, you said, multicultural housing.
Yes, yes.
How long did that last? Is it still going on, or what did it transition to?
Yes. So within Middle Earth and also Mesa Court, another residence hall had another project very similar called Sierra. So there were two happening at the same time. Sierra was established before Misty Mountain, but again also had the same academic curriculum. So many of those are still going on today, as a matter of fact. And even as a result of those classes, as we grew in size, we opened up Arroyo Vista housing, Greek and theme housing. And within that community, we had the Rosa Parks house, we had the Chicano Latino house. So we started, expanding this concept to the larger campus community, residential living communities. And, till this day, this continues. So there's definitely a value as an institution that we see in bringing people together that share a common interest or a common theme, to talk about culture, race, identity, and how to navigate within our society. So that's one of the landmarks, I think, that really helped UCI. It really put UCI on the map in terms of institutions on a national level looking to model what we were doing.
You've mentioned, Arroyo Vista and Rosa Parks House and others. Can you tell me a little bit more about those houses, their establishment, and your role in in helping to get those started?
Mm-hmm. Again, at the early stage of the development of those houses, my primary focus was Middle Earth. At this point, I was still a residential life coordinator, so my focus was primarily in what was taking place in Middle Earth. But I watched the progress and the growth of the other houses. It wasn't until I became the executive director of undergraduate housing that I had direct oversight of those particular houses. And again, that was an intense process. The houses were relatively small in size, somewhere between 16 to 32 people living in each house. It was a selection process to be placed in the house, and incoming students had to write applications to enter the house, and faculty and staff would sit down together to go through all of the candidates and to try to find the best fit to who could help build and develop the type of community that they wanted within those houses, whether that being the Chicano Latino house, whether that being the Rosa Parks house, whether that being the Kaleidoscope house. That was a very active process, in addition to academic housing that was taking place at the same time, engineering, bio, as well as Greek housing, which was also there. So there were a multitude of different things happening, which meant a lot of coordination, a lot of meetings with faculty, staff, Greek sponsors, the dean of students, to ensure that we were fostering an environment that everyone would feel comfortable in the UCI experience. But within those houses, individuals were committed to whatever the mission of that house was. So in particular, the Rosa Parks house, committed to the African American experience and what we could do to support those students in the African American experience. I want to go back, if you don't mind, to talk a little bit about my role when I was the director of Campus Village. As the director of Campus Village, and also as the president of the Black Faculty Staff Association at the same time, it was paramount and critical for me to look at the African American student experience and what we were doing as faculty and staff to support those particular students. So way back in the day, I established, as the president of the Black Faculty and Staff Association, kin groups. And the kin groups really comprised of a faculty or staff member that would sponsor 4 students every year: a first-year student, second-year student, junior, and a senior. And that became your kin group. And the expectation was that you would meet with this kin group on a monthly basis to develop a relationship with these students and to help foster their experience. I am particularly proud of my kin group because I can say that in 2021, on November 14th, 16 of them came over for our annual Thanksgiving dinner. This started in 1989. And now fast forward that I have still maintained a relationship with these now, no longer students. These are doctors, lawyers, actors, vice presidents of banks, politicians. But once a year, we continue to get together. So the concept of the kin group was that after the senior graduated, then a new freshman would be introduced to the group. And every year that would continue in theory. So my group continued to grow, but my core were the 4 students that were at UCI. So that was one of the things that I was very proud of, that we had established this kin group. And students enjoyed the fact that they had a direct connection with a faculty, particularly, we're talking African-American students, with African-American faculty or staff that could support them in their endeavors. And collectively, there were expectations that each faculty and staff were to fulfill: meeting with your group once a month, meeting with each individual at least once a month, so that you had individual opportunity as well as group opportunity, looking at their academic progress, looking at their social involvement, and really being a support to those students that were coming in. And so I was really pleased with that. One of the things in particular that
Can I
yes.
ask you? So when were you you mentioned this was when you were the president of the Black Faculty and Staff Association.
Yes.
So what years were you president?
And again, I'm retired, so the years don't come to me as well as they did. But I'm going to say 1994. I was president for, I believe, 6 years.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So and so we did a lot within those 6 years. But again, our primary mission was to support the students, as well as the issues that African American faculty and staff were experiencing. I know that we met with Chancellor Ewing at the time, and we talked about the support system that we needed from the institution. And I remember in particular, we asked to meet with her, and we received a response that she couldn't fit us on her schedule, and that was a little off-putting. but we chose to pursue that agenda, and made it very clear to us that if she did not meet with us, then that we would let the African American students and faculty and staff know that we were not an important item on her agenda. So we communicated that back, and shortly after we had a meeting with her, which was,
So yeah, I mean that's wow.
yeah, yeah,
Wow. Is my response that, there wasn't time in the
yes.
schedule to meet with you all in
Um,
regards to your concerns, but I wanted to hear a little bit more about what your concerns were.
Well, we were just concerned about, the lack of, representation on the campus for, the recruitment efforts for faculty and staff, the demographics of our African American students only being 2% at that time. And that, we were saying that, we used the analogy that, we are drowning, and we need a life preserver, and you haven't even gotten into the boat yet, you know. And so that really kind of shook her, and so she made it a priority. And back then, put together some committees to see what she could do to support us and our needs. And so we developed a very good relationship with her at that point, but it really took something to shock her, to say these are the issues that we are experiencing here on the campus. And and again, being at her level, that she may not have been aware of those issues. So I think that was the foundation of there's a population that I need to pay attention to on the campus that needs to be a priority for us.
Yeah. Um, I don't know if many people are really aware of kind of the history of the Black Faculty and Staff Association, and how that came about and its membership. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, we were a grassroots organization. Again, back then, we were still a relatively young campus. So I would probably say that that has changed to date. But at the time, there needed to be a foundation or a platform for everything to grow. And so I'd like to think that we were at least the second or third rung on the ladder to get that momentum moving. But again, as a community, we needed to come together to recognize what we were feeling and what we were doing, what we needed. So we were sponsoring monthly meetings. We were sponsoring opportunities to get together for barbecues in Aldrich Park. We were doing fundraisers or community service for things that we felt were important. We were trying to see how we could support the students. And we were also trying to connect with one another. The campus, is not that small. And with I believe at the time we had 108 faculty and staff on the campus. And we were spread out. So we could be invisible to one another because of, physical proximity. So we really tried to identify a place and time to bring everyone together. And then once we had everyone together, we needed to find out, what our common goals were, and to work with everyone to support those goals. So we established a newsletter, and I think Gerald Parham took some initiative in terms of making sure that would happen. We established regular get-togethers, which was important. We met with, remember, we met with the Chicano Latino, Faculty Staff Association to see whether or not we shared common goals. So that was really a foundation for what I see continues, as the institution continues to grow, but really centered upon making sure that we as faculty and staff were good. And when I say good, safe, not only, physically, but intellectually, and that we could do our jobs to support the constituents that, we're looking to make an impact on.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, you mentioned one colleague, Gerald Parham. Were there others that you recall were really pivotal as you were, carrying out your goals and your vision for the association?
Yeah, Dr. Christine Mosley, she was she was critical in terms of being a resource for her. She was the prior president of the Black Faculty and Staff Association. I don't think we could have done anything without the assistance of Dr. Thomas Parham, who really knew how to navigate the system and provided leadership and guidance. At that time, Dr. Horace Mitchell was our Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs. So he also served as a conduit of information for us, which really helped us kind of springboard the direction in which we would go. So I think those are some. Deborah Brandon also played a key role in that process during the earlier stages of our development. So I think there are some key individuals that really kind of helped us throughout the process. Marlene Dice is another one. Robin Jeffers is another staff member that was crucial in terms of helping us move forward as a community. Those are just a few that come to mind. One of the things that I did want to say, not only did we have the kin groups, but it was very important for me that the kin groups did more than just meet and go bowling and have potlucks, that we made a difference on the campus. So in particular, my kin group, I could just not let them sit idle. That's not who I am. So we got together and we decided that we wanted to have an impact on the campus somehow. And so we established the Black Leadership Advancement Coalition, which was, again, a grassroots, concept that, 4 students and myself over my, dining room table brainstormed, what could we do? So the Black Leadership Advancement Coalition was designed to bring all the African American groups together under one umbrella and to ensure that we were on common ground. And then we wanted to have an opportunity to acknowledge and celebrate the accomplishments of our students and our faculty and staff. So I believe in 2001, we had our first Black Gala. And we were giving out scholarships of $250 to 4 or 5 students. And I remember the organizations would fundraise. I remember we'd do lamppost pizza, or we do car washes. We do whatever we could to raise money to try to support our students who were financially struggling. And at the same time, we would go ahead and give out awards to faculty and staff who had demonstrated a commitment to the success of our African American students. So, like I said, we were very small. It was a great foundation. Now, 20 some odd years later, the Black continues. It's no longer small. We have given out over $100,000 worth of scholarships to students over the years. And we have acknowledged many, 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 many faculty. And we always reach out to an alumni to come and be our keynote speaker, so that students can see the success that UCI has generated. And so now we give out scholarships of $1,000, $2,000 to not only 5 students, but to 10 to 15 students every year. And we have donors that are matching contributions. If we give out 20,000, they'll match another 20,000. So the program, which started out over 20 some odd years ago, has grown beyond my expectation. But it's nice to say that this concept started and it has kind of gained the momentum of the campus, and the campus supports it wholeheartedly. We usually have between 300 to 500 in attendance on an annual basis, just celebrating the accomplishments of our African American students. We have committees that help pick the scholarships. We have students that help with the planning of the program, and it's a very formal, event. So I'm really pleased to see that the kin group and the Black, Leadership Advancement Coalition continue on the UC Irvine campus, that I started over 20 some odd years ago.
Can you thank you for offering such great information about something, again, that I don't know that everybody knows about, that happens on campus. And how how important it is to the community to host Black Gala and through the Black. And I actually want to see if you could speak to that significance a little bit more. I mean, are there reflections or comments or even observations that you've made from different students or faculty or staff um, about the program and what it means
Yeah.
to the African American, the Black community on campus?
Yes. I know that, for many of our students, it is an opportunity again to see the community as a collective. Not very often do we get, that many African American students, in the same room. The other opportunity would be the fall harvest, which we started at the beginning of the school year, where we invite all the African American students, new and old, to come together to meet on the first day of classes. But the gala really kind of signifies, and demonstrates to our students the commitment that the institution has towards their success. Because not only, are our students coming, we have the chancellor coming, we have vice chancellors coming, we have the chief of police coming, we have almost every major department in the institution coming to show their physical presence, that we are here to support you, that you are an important part of the university campus, and we are demonstrating that. And to go to the gala, it's not a free event. So, people have to pay. Tables cost close to $1,000, and all this money goes back to our students. So there's a commitment from our departments, and if students can't, there's no student that's ever turned away. So if a student cannot afford to go to the Black, then a department will sponsor that student as a commitment to them and their success. But it is a great opportunity to see not only the faculty there, but to also see, the campus supporters there as well as local. Our mayors from the city of Irvine have come, from Tustin have come to show their support of the African American community. And in essence, I think what we're trying to do is to ensure that we are recognized for our greatness, that we are recognized for our contributions to our society and to the UCI campus, and that this is our opportunity to showcase those contributions. And we have our students perform, we have students from the arts department, sing or dance, again, just to kind of demonstrate their talents. And then when we give out awards, we don't just give out an award, but we share the academic success of our students as we present those awards. So the campus sees that an African American engineer with a 4.3 GPA is going to, Boeing, or going somewhere to do phenomenal work. And so I think, it's just always amazed when we read the recipients and we see what they've accomplished at UCI, and we know what they're going to accomplish in the future.
You make it sound so easy, Fred.
No, it is not easy.
So,
it is a lot. It is. It's a lot of work for people who don't get paid to do this, because this is completely outside their job description. But it's for people. It's for people who are committed, and I think, and it's also an opportunity for us to stay connected with our students, because ideally the program was designed where we have one representative from every group, African American group on campus, participate in the Black. And again, its initial design was that on a monthly basis, all these groups would come together to share what was going on in their particular organizations, and then to contribute to the development and the promotion of the actual gala at the end of the year. Now, I haven't been on the campus in a few years, so I know that, as most things, most things transform and take on a new direction. But the core is still there in terms of what its initial purpose was.
Did you ever face, challenges in trying to to either, put on programming like Black Gala, or to have your voices heard through, Black Faculty and Staff Association or in other terms, so that you could, try to really foster the sort of support and community that you envision for, the Black community at UCI?
Yeah, I would say that's a great question, and to be frank and honest, um, I use the word grassroots a lot. I think that I would have wanted the Black to be adopted by the campus as opposed to by a group of committed faculty and staff who wanted to share their time to make this happen. And in the early stages, I know that we went to try to get institutional support, and we didn't quite get the institutional support for whatever reason. It may have been Prop 209, other issues. So we had to, do a go around and says, okay, we'll just take this on as a community, but we are resilient people. If the institution won't put us on their budget, then we will develop our own budget outside the institution and make this dream a reality. And so I think, during the early stages, the institution wasn't creative enough to figure out how to do that. So we did it ourselves. And I think under leadership and guidance, under Dr. Parham and so forth, we were able to get institutional support, which took a lot of the burden off of our students. Because I remember we would do, like I said, fundraisers at Fatburger. Yeah, I had a group of 25, 30 students working at night, trying to help support raising money so we can give sponsorships when those students could be spending their time, studying and so forth, but they were committed to the cause. So over time, I think the institution, was able to adopt or become creative enough to find a way to support us and still within, the guidelines of being equitable and fair to all students. But yes, that was one of the challenges. But again, since we did most of this ourselves, we tended to run outside the circle of the institution while still being on the institutional campus.
That's a really important point I think you are raising here about, you said going outside of the university while still being inside the university to get things done. But you've also mentioned too, how much how many contributions were made by faculty, staff, and students without getting paid for it, in addition to whatever it was that they were on campus to do for their career, their job, or
Right.
As students. And so, I mean, how much we've been focusing on Black Gala, but how much of of the other things that have been supported by Black faculty and staff, and outside of that, through the Black community, have been done in this way.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate, but it's fortunate, because I think, I don't want to say misery loves company, but but there's a sense that when you're in it together, you're building something together. And without those struggles, those opportunities to build those relationships and solidify those relationships and identify those issues may be forgotten. So I think, we can look at it and say, yeah, we didn't have that, but we can also look to say but by not having that, we developed the strength and the encouragement to continue to move forward as a group of people and make change. And I think that makes us stronger. It's unfortunate, but in some cases it's fortunate, because we grew together as a community through that.
Were there other programs or initiatives outside of Black Gala that you know really bring fond memories
Yeah.
to you?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't want to gloss over, that, when I was the director of Campus Village, we decided that we were going to have, this thing called the Fall Harvest, and again, very, very grassroots. Faculty and staff donated money, time, food, and we would get a barbecue grill and tables and put on the basketball court of Campus Village. And we'd invite all the new African American students on that first day, and we'd have a cookout, and we'd do introductions, and we'd do games. And now it's a catered event, by the institution, right? That really celebrates and recognizes, this orientation for students. But again, that was a grassroots idea, that my group started, under my leadership, and it continues today.
Who else was a part of that group
um,
that founded Fall Harvest?
it was well, I mean, Arnesia Bryant worked for me. Evelyn Shivers worked for me. It was really under the auspice of the Black Faculty and Staff Association. So whoever, but it was something in particular that I took ownership for and leadership on. And then we would just ask for volunteers, can you, and people would bring hot dog buns, and people would donate money, and people would bring cookies, and then we'd bring the PA system out, and we would just take over Campus Village from 4 o'clock in the afternoon to 11 o'clock at night on the first Friday of school, and really kind of say, hey, here we are as a group of people. And if you were coming and you didn't know anyone, it was a great opportunity to connect with your family, which is what we'd like to think of them as. So, but that, like I said, that event continues. It
Yeah.
continues, and there's great support by the campus. As I said, it's sponsored, so there's no more cooking, no more. It's moved from Campus Village to the Cross Cultural Center, which is probably a great place for it to be, But it's nice to see how the concept grew from this to where it is today. Yeah.
What year was the first year for Fall Harvest?
I'm going to say 99, probably 94, probably 94. And again, that's a guess,
Somewhere in the mid 90s.
Yes, I mean, I wish that I knew when all these things were going on, the importance of documentation, but
Yeah.
we were so into doing them
Mhm.
versus trying to, develop the history of them. But, because there are many programs that start that don't last, but these are some key signature ones that seem to have found, a reputation and a place on the UCI campus.
And for Fall Harvest, I mean, how did you even come up with this is what we're going to do,
Yeah.
and this is
Yeah.
when it's going to be, and this is why?
Yeah, that's a great question. I remember, my Black Faculty Staff Association, Marlene, myself, I'm trying to think who the others were. We knew that we needed to do something to get our community together. And for some reason, it was in the fall and the leaves were changing. So we just said, well, let's call it the Fall Harvest. And sometimes it's those simple ideas, that can trigger something that you have no idea that the momentum is going to continue to carry it. And so really that's how it came about. And then it was a matter of, I remember we would go out and say, okay, if you see anyone that looks like African American, it was as simple as that sometimes, because at that point the internet, texting, all this wasn't probable. We were at flyers and paper back then. Okay, so let's give it to this person. Let's give it to this person. Our technology isn't where it is today. So we had to rely on good old fashioned, flyer and giving out flyers as we saw people walking down. Hey, you know about the Fall Harvest? You know about the Fall Harvest? And she's like, what's the Fall Harvest? What's the Fall Harvest? So we had to educate, and then, am I going to go to this? I don't know. And then, over time, word starts to get out, and then it becomes institutionalized, through its own system.
I'm laughing because I'm going to say I think that's how I got to fall harvest. I feel like I feel like I was walking and somebody said, "Hey,
and we would
are you
tell them,
going to fall harvest?" And I'm like,
if you
"What's fall
see
harvest?"
someone, right, if you see someone, say something to them. If you see someone, say something to them,
So that approach, basically that approach works.
Right, right. In its infancy, you know what I mean? And sometimes, that good old fashioned, communication, face to face communication does wonders.
Oh my goodness. I mean, we've covered so much, but I feel like there's still so much that you have to, share about your
Oh,
time at UCI. And so I want to kind of come back because
yes, there's one thing that I wanted to mention before I leave is as I worked for the Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs, Thomas Parham, and I really enjoyed my experience working with him. He put on a program called New Narratives: Conversations Regarding Race and Identity. So I sponsored several big programs, bringing key individuals to the campus like Common, Laverne Cox, and so forth under that. But he also said, at the time there were still issues on the campus, particularly around how students felt like they were being treated, and particularly African American men. This is during the early stages where Black men were feeling like they were being profiled, and so forth. And so he asked me to put together a program to try to bring the African American men together. So I remember our first meeting, and when someone usually asks me to do something, it doesn't just stop at like there, like it has to be something. So we got about 20 African American men together over lunch to kind of talk about the issues, that they were experiencing on the campus and what was happening in society. And Dr. Parham led the dialogue. Dr. Gregory Washington, who used to be the dean of engineering, also participated. And all of a sudden, we saw something. There was some momentum building. There was a void that Black men were feeling. And so from that, I created the Black Gentlemen's Breakfast Club. I'm not sure whether you've heard of that or not.
I have
Yes.
heard
So,
it.
so I so I created the Black Gentlemen's Breakfast Club, and I reached out to volunteers: Josh Jogway, PJ Walker, who are a few of the Alejandro, and a few other young gentlemen, and asked them to volunteer. And the students come to know that when Fred says volunteer, that means you're going to work. Whether you like it or not, you're going to work. But I'm also going to, you know, take care of you, dinners, movies, bowling, and so forth. So we put together the Black Gentlemen's Breakfast Club. And once a month, we would meet as a group. And we would go over the demographics of the campus, the retention rates of African Americans, study skills. We brought in the police to talk about, relationships with the police. We talked about, we did, how to tie a tie. We had the Men's Warehouse come in to give us proper etiquette. We went to the art to do, culinary skills. But once I had alumni come in, I had Eddie McGee, who's an EM emergency room doctor, Jeff Lewis, who's the photographer for the LA Rams, Ronald Whitehouse, who's a VP of a bank, all as relatively young alumni come back and talk. And so once a month, we'd have a program where we'd have all the Black gentlemen come, and we called it the Breakfast Club because you have no class at breakfast time. So you get up early, but you can't say you can't come because you got class, because there's no class at 7 o'clock in the morning. And I think our largest number was 85 Black men in attendance.
Wow, that's amazing.
And so,
These are
and we
undergraduates and graduate students?
undergraduates, graduates, and so we averaged around 30 on a regular basis, but our highest was about 85, and it really kind of brought the community together as a whole. Now, since I've left UCI, I think that program unfortunately has disbanded, but that was a great program that I was very proud of, and, kind of left a mark.
What's a I'm not complete. It may still you may still exist. I'm trying to think. Pre-pandemic,
Right,
pre-COVID.
right.
I feel like I still caught wind of a few
Okay,
of these
good.
activities happening. Of course, with COVID, it's been a little bit more of a challenge over the past two years
Right.
to keep
Yes,
track
yes,
of
yes.
what's going on over Zoom and whatnot. Um, but I wanted to kind of come back to kind of this sense of belonging that you were trying to create with the gentleman's breakfast, and to, ask a few more questions about um, what um, what the students were feeling on campus, and why they were feeling that way.
Yeah. I mean, it was amazing in terms of the number of students that had been pulled over by the police on the UCI campus. I mean, just listening to their pain. It was amazing how many of us shared similar experiences, but yet in isolation. You know, and so for us, it became a great opportunity to validate, that this is not a perception, this is our reality, and to kind of talk that through. I remember Dr. Parham and Dr. Washington, were kind of, talking about the talk that you have with your Black boys, as parents, in terms of hands on the steering wheel, and so forth. Don't make any sudden movements. I I remember and feeling the impact of those statements, and shortly after being pulled over by the police, and thinking, okay, what do I need to do? Again, this is now my reality. So I think for us, it was a very, it's a very sad time to see that in today's society we were all experiencing similar things, but yet that we knew that, we could reach out for each other for support should we need to. And so I think that kind of served as a great foundation, a great, counseling session, for lack of a better word, as African Americans can really be vulnerable to kind of talk about their experiences on the campus. So I think that there's a lot to be said about that. And again, it was important to me that we balance that with not just, the heavy, but we also have fun too, and that's why we all learned how to cook, right? Or learned how to tie a tie. And like the Men's Warehouse donated, 100 ties to us, right? Based upon, a request, can you give us ties, and can you come and give us some fashion, skill sets and so forth. So I think the combination of both, made it a really good experience. Those are the types of programs that I personally enjoy, making that holistic approach to our students, on the campus.
Um, we've been talking a lot about how the students were feeling experience what they might the male students, male identifying students, were experiencing on campus. Was it similar for faculty and staff, or was it just a kind of a
Yeah, I would say
different
that our
situation?
focus was primarily on the students, and at this juncture, my focus was on the students. While we had staff participate in these programs, few, I mean, there were fewer African American men, faculty and staff, and so those that chose to come, shared perspectives, but really the focus was on the students. I don't know whether the Black Faculty and Staff Association looked at the experiences of, for Black men as we looked at the experience for Black students.
Mhm.
Yeah.
How was your experience? I mean, we've been talking kind of about other
Yeah.
people, about the students and what have you,
Yeah.
but how was your experience?
I mean, on the campus, I could say that, generally, I mean, I recognize who I am and where I am, and I accept that, and accept to make change where I can make change. My experience on the Irvine campus was nothing more than positive. Everyone has those ups and downs, but overall, Irvine, treated me well, and they allowed me an opportunity to leave an impact. And so I think I've been blessed to be able to do that. There was nothing devastating, to me as a Black man, that I could say Irvine did to me. I could say Irvine gave me a platform to pave the way for others. And so for that, I will always be appreciative. So.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
we weren't talking about everybody but you. I mean,
No. But I continue to meet with the members of the Black Gentleman Club. The one thing that Irvine has done for me, it has allowed me to be a conduit to help others. As I was meeting with a African American student yesterday, and he had some issues, that I was able to reach out to an African American professional, in that particular background, to help counsel that student. So I think, it's provided me the opportunity to see our young students grow and become professionals, but yet not have them forget that there are other students behind that still need their help and assistance. Mm-hmm. But I have to run, though, unfortunately. I have another meeting.
Oh, you do? Okay. Well, then I will say, can I ask two more questions? And this has been so great. I wonder if I'll have to get you back again at some point. But, one question that I've been asking everybody that I've interviewed has to do with their perspective given the goals of the Black Thriving Initiative that's currently in place at UCI, with the hope of fostering research and community and awareness that helps to create a community that not only supports getting Black students and faculty and staff here, but helping them thrive here at UCI. And so I wonder if you have any, words of wisdom from your own experience working on campus and, really watching students and faculty and staff, survive, thrive here. What would some words of wisdom that you have be for, ensuring the success of the Black Thriving Initiative?
And again, since I'm retired, I am not actively involved in.
No, I know. But I just think, you've been involved in UCI for a number of years, and I think you've seen you've watched it grow and
right.
And so,
I would like to think, that no is not acceptable. That there is a way that we can ensure the success of the African American students, and that there's always a creative solution for the result that we're looking for, and that we continue to push the issue of coming up with creative solutions for the betterment of our community. And I think whether it's creating our own programs or working through the institutional programs, that we find a balance, because I will say this, that the student population when I was at UCI was very amenable to working with administration and working through process. But we have a new student population now that's very willing to take a position until their expectations are met, and will not sit around for the bureaucracy to kind of ride its course. So my words would be that there's a new generation, and we need to be prepared to learn how to address that new generation.
Thank you so much, Fred. Was there anything else that you wanted to finish with before we close?
No, I've really enjoyed this. It gave me an opportunity to go down memory lane. I wish I had more concrete dates and things of that nature.
Oh, that's okay.
but yeah, but I really enjoyed the opportunity. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Fred. It's been a pleasure.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye bye.